Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and this is the Eddie Network Podcast. And my guest today is Barbara Kleeb, physician and polymath coach from Switzerland. We may have another guest that comes on momentarily. We'll see. Hope to have made this a group conversation. Welcome, Barbara. I'm glad you're here and always glad to talk with you.
Wonderful to see you, Ed. You're a wonderful person, and it's always fun to see you and speak with you.
Good. Thanks for reading the correct script.
Oh, you didn't send it to me yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that very much. About a year and a half ago, Barbara reached out to me, and I don't remember exactly what the sequence of steps was, but you told me that you thought I was a polymath, and you invited me into your Network Cafe Polymath group.
Yeah.
No one had ever said that to me before. I had heard about polymathy, but I didn't really know what that meant. I just thought it was a bunch of smart eggheads from academia who knew more than everybody else at the university. And that was kind of my perception of it. And you certainly have broadened my perception, as well as many other people that I've met through you and through other people who are polymaths and have been on the podcast. So what I'd like to talk about with you is how to explain what polymath is to people who have never heard of this. I see this as kind of an introductory video sort of thing. And I'd like to approach it from the perspective of my circle of impact model. So I'd like to talk about the ideas of polymathy, the relationships that polymath can have with one another, and then the kinds of structures that business people and organizations need to create to help polymaths really feel a part of what goes on in the business, the organization, and to thrive in those contexts. So that's kind of like what I'd like to talk about. How's that?
Wonderful. I love that.
Okay. So tell us how what was the thing that first introduced you to the world of polymathy? Maybe we ought to give a definition first. I know I like your definition. Maybe you give the definition, then we talk about how you came to see that.
So there's no definition of polymath. Is the consensus. I just talked with Stummer, that you've also talked, and he said, no, there's no definition of polymath. So we kind of, yeah. So my personal definition is, part of it I have from Angela's thesis. Polymaths comes from many learnings in Greek. And I think you need to have at least 3 deep interests in many fields.
And what is that? What is a deep interest? What does a deep interest mean? What do you mean? What kind of give us an idea?
Some people have 3 different jobs. Some people have 3 PhDs, but they are the ones that are in the definition that you came from. But for me, the more interesting people is the ones that are practically doing stuff with it, or having developed their own ideas, and so not the ones who have just studied and studied and studied, because I think that's not the point of the center of polymath.
What would be those 3 or 4 or 5 kind of focal points for you?
For me, it would be I first learned photography. I did a lot of music. Even I recorded my own songs and wrote them and recorded them with Cuban musicians. I mean, I did many jobs in this that normally is a team. I did it all myself. I interacted with the one who did the graphic art, like an art director, and so I finished these things. And then there is medicine and the human health, and how human perceive and how human are, and how they can be happy and healthy and more aware.
How often do those 3 things of photography, music, and medicine or health come together? become intertwined as kind of a fabric of your life.
There's not a number that I can give you, but I'm for example, when I studied medicine, I was so glad that in optics I was actually already a pro, because how the eye works and that stuff we learned in photography. So I was new to something in medicine, but I was an expert of the 3 years education as a photographer. That stuff can happen.
So polymathy is really being able to take a lot of different things and kind of find a way that they touch one another and in a meaningful way. I mean, I mean, I like music. I like music. I like movies. I like philosophy. I like travel. I like mountains. I like people. I like different people. I like leadership. I like talking about things. I mean, all those things are kind of things which are kind of define me as a person. And
Yeah,
I like doing podcast. I like writing. I mean, all those things. Um, and I just see them as all the things I like to do, which I think is why you saw this in me. And I think you're right. I think you're right. But I'm not the classic, whatever is thought of in the past. I'm not that classic kind of polymath, which is fine. And
it's
in
great.
fact, I would even take a little section of it, and that my polymathy is really um, integrated into how I talk with people. So I can talk with everyone without consideration, because somewhere in their existence there's something that I've learned, something I've studied, something I've heard from someone else that I can draw upon to bring into the relationship with them, so that we have a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, that's so funny. I had this thought after you finish. Like when I have a consultation, I always have deep conversations with people because I've met the field they are in
Mhm.
from somewhere, or because okay, I have many other interests than the ones I just asked. I was working in business as a consultant. I'm interested in leadership, and I will make my own podcast very soon, and yeah, many other things. But I don't like to fill the paper with talking about me. That's just not
Yeah.
who I am.
Well, I think what we could say is that other people are more interesting than we are.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I don't think I'm very interesting in that regard, but I'm really interested in other people. And like I was in a coffee shop last night, and this young man, 30ish, walks in the door, and he sits down beside me, and he's got a particular accent. And I say, "Where are you from?" And he says, "I'm from Spain." So and he's been teaching Spanish and Portuguese here in town at the university, and he's getting ready to leave to go to another school. You know, he's got another appointment at another school, and so we started talking, and I was talking about something I was in the midst of writing on, and I would mention a couple of names of people, and I knew that these were French theorists, and I knew no one I know knows who these people are. He says, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, you know that? Oh, what about this and this?" And all of a sudden, I was immersed in a conversation with someone who actually appreciated these writers that I appreciate, and that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
nobody around us that was listening in knew a thing of what we were talking about. So it's that's one of the beauties of this, and I think that's the idea. If we talk about the idea of polymathy, is that we can find that the world is rich, full of interesting things that we can immerse ourselves in and become acquainted enough so that we can share that with the people who actually know what they're talking about, we can become a part of their world that way.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is interesting in the context that you showed this circle initially is a polymath in a business has um, things that they do differently than anyone else. So if everyone else goes and is expert in a field and wants to drill deeper and deeper, I mean, that's maybe also a myth. I don't know how many people are really like that, but the typical expert, the polymath walks in with the glasses of I don't know anything, and then gets curious and gets into explorer mode and wants to know what is everyone around him or her doing in all the places, and then gets like a general understanding of the whole business, including where are the weak points.
Mhm.
And that is the thing that I think if a CEO would know that he has people who are seeing the weak points in such a way, that's kind of a big golden nugget. That if he's open to learning and to knowing those things, and not just there for his he to have his his glory fulfilled. But if he really wants to have a good business, he should know who those people are, and he should have a way of conversing with those people, because they have such a knowledge that would be so valuable for a business to which would also create benefits, I mean financial benefits in the end, because money gets lost.
So that raises a question for me, and I've mentioned this to you before. I know that there are polymaths, and they're the polymaths that come to your group, the Network Cafe. Some of them are really very brilliant, bright, highly intelligent people who are the leaders of their field on a historical level.
Yep.
And we think of them as the kind of the quintessential polymath because their intelligence covers a wide spectrum of topics.
Yep.
But what I see, in addition to that, is that polymathy is a way to live,
Yeah.
way to approach life, and I would call that a pattern of behavior. So we can repeat this pattern of curiosity all the time. So someone that's listening to this conversation could say, well, that sounds interesting. I could do that. I'd like to know more about this topic, And so, my interest is in encouraging people not to decide whether they are a polymath in some kind of label, but rather how to be a polymath and how they behave and function in their lives.
Yeah. I find it's so interesting. Okay, one of the things, I have many thoughts at the same time. I have to decide for one. So now, curiosity has a negative connotation sometimes.
How come?
People say it's none of your business, but I call that nosiness.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's also in the context of curiosity. And then there are people who are in it who are intensely rejecting curiosity that I've met,
Yes.
who don't want to have black holes in a business uncovered, maybe because they contribute to creating those black holes, or hiding those black holes is important for their role in the context of the survival of the business.
Right.
And there the curious people get like hit.
Yes, totally, totally. I mean, this was the conversation I had with Eric Zabagalski. I think I got his name right. I apologize, Eric. Eric will watch this. Eric met through Angela Codalesa Myers, I was
Yes.
watching a video that they were doing on his work, which is organizational ambidexterity, which I didn't know, had never heard of before. So I invited him on. And what Eric did, I mean, this is typical polymathic kind of thing. He watched every episode of the Eddie Network podcast and then sent me a multi-page overview of what he saw there. And so I've interviewed him, and his our conversation posted uh, on Thursday, the 18th of July, and it's really interesting. But in that he goes into that sort of that there are those that are resistant to anything new or anything that explores the something new in the world, and he's exactly right about that. And that's I encountered that a lot as a consultant. Yeah, we'd like you to come in and help us to solve this problem. And once it became clear what the problem was, what the solution was, I say, well, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's that rings a bell.
I'm saying I'm going to, and there's one other place. I went in as an interim to a church, and I pastored this church for 2 years, and I was told they're going to love you, and they're going to love you so much that you'll want to stay. And at the end of it, I said, yeah, they really did love me, but they wouldn't do anything that I'd tell them to do. and and the guy that they have there now he's the perfect person for them, and he's done a great job. Um, so you know, it's that kind of relationship we have with people where they're curious, but what do they do with that curiosity that actually changes their life? How do they learn something that says, I'm going to be different? I'm going to stop doing this the one thing. I'm going to start doing something new. I would imagine that in the healthcare and the medical field that you encounter that a lot, where people realize I need to change my diet, or I need to stop drinking so much alcohol. I mean, and so they're changing their lifestyle in order to better their life.
This is a hard one because changing the lifestyle is very hard for many people.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are successfully really changing their lifestyle so that they lose many kilos and stick to that weight, they are very seldom. But it's a great topic. And yeah, sometimes people are asking the question and then they don't really want to know the answer. But I'm always starting the conversation if they give it to me, and look, how deep can I go, and what do they actually want to do, or are they just unhappy? And some people are okay. I'm unhappy. My doctor listens to me. That's what I want. So then I need to stop there, because otherwise we are both losing energy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm on the other side of this with my physician team. I have another where I do a lot of research, and I walk in already with an understanding of what I'm going to find from them, and I'm saying, oh no, that's not what I see. That's not what I want. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this because I know that this will have a better outcome with less damage to my body or something like that.
Yeah.
And they have learned to respect me, where at one point they would have been very condescending to me. And
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, so
You have to change doctors because they were too condescending.
or I changed the doctor. That's
Yes, you
it.
have to change them sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm going to give them the chance to respect what I'm saying to them, because the logic is, I would say, the logic is irrefutable. And I put it this way: it says, and this is really my choice because it's my life that we're talking about. And if I choose to go this path rather than that path, it's because I've come to the conclusion that this is the better path for me.
Yeah, this is interesting that you're saying that, because the way I treat my patients is I'm giving them many options what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I let them select in which direction they want to go. And then there are patients who don't even want to have anything taken. They just come to me to have their problem explained, and maybe they need to hear that it's nothing it's nothing grave. So they don't go home with anything except the knowledge that they're well, and that's what they wanted. And some want plants, and some want other medicine, and some want chiropractors, and blah blah blah. So I'm holistic in that way, that I'm seeing where does the problem come from and what would I suggest to do. And if there are options, I try to expose them. And then they choose because they want to. And then they normally adhere much better to the choices. Instead of the traditional medical doctor says, take this pill for this ill, and then you have to be compliant, and then they're unhappy because the patient are not compliant. The patient in this system doesn't make the choice. With me, they make the choice. They can choose to take nothing, but I don't want them to say, I want something and then put it to the garbage at home because I force them to do something.
Well, you don't want them living a lie. They're saying they're doing one thing and they're doing another.
Yeah.
You want people to be as honest, because that honesty is key to the integrity of their lives. Because when you live a lie, it has a detrimental effect on your emotions, and it has a detrimental effect on your body. I mean, it creates that anxiety and stress. That's in a very polymathic way. We could take that little piece that we've just been talking about and apply it society wide to how we deal with big political social issues.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And the other thing is there's no hierarchy because it's their health.
That's right.
I'm there to support them, and it's their health. So they have to decide for themselves. Ultimately, healing is self-healing, I was taught once by a woman.
You're on their team. They're
I'm
not.
on their team, yes.
Yeah, that's the way I view it. And so so we're talking the relationship component here. We're talking about relationship of polymaths to people who are not polymaths or may not know that they are. And I think part of what we have to do is be very clear about what we want and what we expect, and be very clear about what we've learned and the research we've done, and go in with questions, because questions are our questions should be creating curiosity in their minds, because they're wondering, where is he getting this? Or they may know where I'm getting this, and they think, well, that's not accepted practice. I said, well, I know that, but there are people that are using it, so I want to understand why they're using it and whether it has any. I'll give you an example. So I had a hip replacement this spring. That all went well, but I had something else going on that was related to my back, and it was that when I would stand or walk in a certain manner, which was indecipherable, my feet would go numb and my legs would go numb. And so they connected me up with a spine surgeon, and so I had an appointment to go to see the spine surgeon. And I have friends who have had the same thing, and I've talked. In one case, I talked to their chiropractor, who's in California. Then I went to see a chiropractor that I had been to see before, and then I go see the spine surgeon, and I go with all this stuff that it says all these different ways of approaching this problem, and the spine surgeon's response was perfect. He says, we can do all those things. We can even do surgery, but you have to understand that people's perception of whether they work is something that they are wanting to believe is working. And we really do not know whether any of these things actually have the kind of effect that you're looking for. And I said, so we're making choices about things we have inadequate information on. He says, yes. I said, I agree with that. I like that. That's the perfect answer. I trust you now, because you're not selling me something. You're telling me this is the actual truthful context that we're living in.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it. And there might be some problems where you would say, now this is absolutely necessary to do a surgery, and then you would believe such a person.
That's exactly right. So I think one of the things that I hope for Polymaths is that they would be able to live a truthful life, where not that, well, they're sort of accepted, but they feel the freedom and the security to speak truthfully. I mean, I think in our circle that meets every other Thursday, I think that is really true there. And I think it's one of the great benefits that you brought to this community of people. And I really, really like that.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, then, I mean, the circle that I mean, the networking coffee that I created is like a space, and I have some things that I'm doing. I'm doing them a bit subtle now. It was a bit more powerful in the beginning. I look that people don't harshly go over that time limit. Sometimes I let somebody speak longer because it's necessary in a context, but I don't want to have somebody who takes the whole hour for him or herself.
Right.
I set boundaries to any form of blaming, because I think that's what keeps the space clear. Blame is not the thing we have to do there.
So so what you're saying, and I'm intuiting into this, that when you log on to your cafe, the Polymath Cafe, you are accepting that one of the ground rules is that we're going to respect one another
Yes.
and we're going to listen,
Yes.
and therefore we will trust one another even when we disagree.
Yes. And then there's often very funny that people agree to a even very diverse statement than they would have made themselves, because it just shows them another perspective. And
Yeah.
we love having different perspectives, because then we can create the wisdom to actually see the world in a better way.
Right. Okay, let me ask you one other question. I think this is important. So there are a lot of different people that watch the podcast, and the people that I'm interested in talking to right now are the people who manage people. They're managers, maybe they're called leaders, and if they have people who are of a polymathic personality trait, let's say, then what is the best way for them to manage them or relate to them in a work context?
I would say the first thing is, and I'm taking somebody from a perspective where he is maybe naive and he doesn't know that this person may be a polymath. If somebody comes and talks about a mistake or something that goes wrong, be curious, be open, and listen who that person is, because he might be given, or she might be giving you a great gift that helps your business to work better. To lead polymaths, don't tell them what to do. Tell them what you need them to get done in the end. What's your vision?
Yeah.
And then leave them alone. Don't control them. Polymaths don't like to be controlled, and they're much better off if they're not, because they find much faster ways. You can even give a polymath a process and say, do that, and then observe what they're doing, and then rewrite your process because your process is too complicated to what the actual way is. A bit like when you give the map of the underground of, what was it, somewhere in Japan, Tokyo, I think, to a fox finds the fastest connection between the stations. Polymaths are like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then support them. Support them, because they might have some traumas that they take with them. They might have some insecurities, some imposter syndrome. Support them if they're bringing IP, give them respect for the IP, kind of reward them for who they are and what they bring, and let them be as different as they want to be. Maybe give them their own office if they're especially sensitive to noise, or put them to another part of the business if they cannot collaborate with some people, because some polymaths are very sensitive to people who are blocking them or are even attracting some
Right.
things. So look that they are in the best field for them, protect them from negative people and negative impact, give them a vision, and you have something wonderful that gives you much more than any other person. And don't kind of give them a job and let them wait in the cellar because you want to have them as a talent in 5 years. They will be gone after 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Give them the respect. They're not the most expensive people, but they give you the greatest value you can ever expect.
Yeah, I totally agree. So you're a polymath coach. What does that look like if someone is having the sense that I'm different and this may be how I'm different? If you enter into a coaching relationship with someone, how does that function?
I just explore who they are, what their needs are, what their beliefs are, and then I help them adjust that to a way to have more fun. Some people need help with trauma. I have many healing techniques for trauma that I've collected from various fields of life. I help them to set boundaries if that's needed. I help them with their self-confidence. And then there's pure coaching, which is just kind of let them condensate what they do and find the best possible solution. So the really artistic coaching that I've learned from my coach supervisor, who wrote the book Simplify Coaching. She says, don't interfere, don't tell the coachee what to do. That's mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching is just asking the right questions,
Yeah.
and listening, and look how long you have to listen.
Yeah.
So that you don't stop a person and give them the thinking container, and then they come up with a brilliant solution, and they might even credit it to you as a coach, but they came up with it themselves. So that's the art of really good coaching, and I love to do that as well.
That's great. And is the best way to find you on LinkedIn? Is that the best place to find you?
Yes.
And maybe if you're interested in considering whether you are a polymath or not, you can come to the network cafe event, right?
Yeah, they can. Or I think I have my Calendly link. Sometimes people pop into my agenda. They find it in my description on LinkedIn.
So they can have a conversation with you
And then
first.
they can have a half an hour conversation, and I'm happy to connect with them, maybe even before the networking coffee. And if they're curious and want to come to the networking coffee, you find the link on any of my posts.
That's great. That's great. So those of you who are watching, I wanted to have this conversation because I had a number of people that I had mentioned this thing called Polymathy too, and I found that they had never heard the word, they didn't know what it's about, and some of these people I knew to be polymaths because they did have 3 or more areas of interest that found an integration in them as a person, which made them very interesting people and people that I would want to hang out with all the time because they're never boring. They're never boring.
There's something I might add to how you find polymath is polymaths don't like the compartmentalization, like the silos in a business and so, because they think cross silos. They think about the like the like I said, the fungus that goes through the whole building. They need to know everything. They're not just pathologically curious. That's the way they need to see the world to understand it. They need to understand the whole space they're in.
And climbing over fences all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, I've done that all my life. You know, it's climbing up and getting over, and oh, what's over there? Oh, that's interesting. And so, if you think you're a polymath, then like explore that, and maybe say what are the three things that are really interesting to me that may seem to have no connection to one another, but actually do in some at some place. And if you're interested, then reach out to Barbara and say, let's have a, a chat about this. Because what I find, and this is really why I wanted to do this more than anything, was I wanted those of you who find that you're very curious and you're very diverse in your interest, and you feel like you're alone and you're in isolation because other people, I mean, you can talk to people about these different things, but there's no community for you where all these things come together. And my concern is for you to find a sense of community somewhere where all these things can be shared with some other people, where they can say, "Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's like this," you know, and that's the way those conversations go.
And I'm also happy to have a conversation with leaders who want to know how to deal with their polymaths,
Yeah.
who might have some problems with some people and don't know if they're open to discuss with me. I'm so happy about that as well.
So I thank you, Barbara, because your invitation to me, you're reaching out to me, brought me into a whole community of people on a global scale that I now consider friends, and I can I can talk to on a regular basis. And I, I think it has freed me to say no to things that I didn't really need to be like thinking about, so I can really embrace the things that I should be. And I'm grateful for that. And it clearly it has affected the poly. I mean my podcast, because probably a third of the people that are on the podcast are polymaths.
That's wonderful. I love that.
Yeah, and because they're really interesting people, and
It's
yeah, they're interesting people, and and this, I mean, this is the way I look at it, and this is you'll understand this better than most people. I was at a bar back in March. I was sitting at the bar watching college basketball tournament. Um, this guy and his wife came and sat down next to me, and I was telling him about the podcast, and this big bar was crowded with people, and I turned to my stool and just kind of waved my arm over the whole room. I said, every one of these people can be on my podcast because every one of them has something to contribute. You see, that's not what is seen by the world. People look at, I mean, I had this conversation recently about, well, they're leaders and they're followers. And I said, no, we lead and follow. And sometimes we do it at the same time. There,
yes.
and everyone has the capacity to be a leader if they will only take initiative to create the impact that they want to create. So every one of these people in this room has something to say, and it would be my job to help them say it in a way that they feel like they've been heard, and that they feel a sense of affirmation that, oh, I really have something to share. I really have something to offer to the world.
Maybe you should do that once. Go to the bar and give everybody in the room your card and interview anyone on your podcast.
Well, that's what I do. I carry around a pack of cards with me. Nobody else carries cards anymore. They have these little digital things that you can scan, but I carry the cards around. And they said, well, I don't have a card. So that's okay. You just send me your contact info. And it's so interesting. It is so interesting. I am waxing eloquent about my own polymathy here. But I thank you for that, because you just kind of validated something that was about me that I knew that made me different from everyone else. And maybe this is another way of saying this to the audience. If you feel like you're always on the outside of any group that you're in, maybe because your curiosity and the range of interest you have doesn't make it easy for you to be a part of that group. They may include you in the group. I'm included in all the groups that I join, but you at some level you just don't feel this is not my group.
Yeah.
But I have something to contribute to that group.
Of course.
So that's kind of the way I see this. And I'm grateful that, I mean, I don't know if I've gone through some kind of major transformation, Barbara, but I've gone through a significant growth and awareness about who I am and how I function. And I'm grateful to you, because you're the one who kind of kicked that can down the street and forced me to go chase it.
Wonderful.
So, well, thank you for being here. Anything else you would like to say about this?
No, I'm happy to jump in again if Angela turns up, so we could have like a group conversation. And I'm happy about the conversation we had today.
Me too. And we'll see what happened with Angela, and maybe I'll get Angela with some of the others that have been on the podcast
as well. Wonderful.
You get a diversity of opinions. So I'm grateful
Exactly.
for your being here, and I'll see you at the next Network Cafe.
Cool. Looking forward. Ciao, Ed. Take care.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone, for watching the Eddie Network podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.